As Arkansas's population grows, so do our energy demands. But with the right mix of resources, reliable, affordable power will always be a reality. These resources are all around us in our rivers, blowing through our trees, even right below our feet. The answer isn't focusing on one resource, it's embracing them all. The electric cooperatives of Arkansas know that a balanced approach to power builds our communities and powers our dreams. Visit themixmatters.com and see why there's power in knowledge.
Welcome back to the Old State House Museum. Mike Ross is the Democratic nominee for Arkansas governor. He'll face Republican Asa Hutchinson in the fall, along with a Green and Libertarian Party candidate. I sat down with Mike Ross on Friday afternoon to talk about his vision for jobs in Arkansas. Let's talk about, before we get into some details of your jobs plan, let's talk about what's going on. This state legislature meets this coming week to talk about a public school employees insurance fund crisis. One of the things they're talking about doing, dropping part-time employees, spouses who have other options will be forced off those plans as well. You've got the support of the AEA behind you, which is the largest teachers union in the state. Do you support the changes that are being advocated?
I haven't reviewed all of the changes. I think regardless of what happens in this special session, I think they're hoping to get it on Monday, out by Tuesday or Wednesday. It's a real narrow focus. And I think everyone from the governor to legislators have acknowledged that this is a temporary short-term fix, a Band-Aid at best. And I think, I'm committed as hopefully the next governor of this state to working with Democrats and Republicans, school teachers, administrators, school board members, policymakers, to hopefully find a long-term fix to this problem.
Well, the long-term fix sounds like it could be painful if you listen to the legislators who have been leading the task force on this. It is, rising premiums for these public school employees, and again, just this cut in benefits and cut in participation. Do you support that?
It's a combination. They didn't. This problem wasn't created overnight. They're probably not going to be able to fix it overnight. I think this is a short-term Band-Aid approach or fix to it, but. They've got to look at the rates, they've got to look at the benefits, and they've got to look at the funding. I mean, in a lot of school districts, only about $150, $151 a month is spent toward an employee's insurance. Most places in the public and private sector, the employer is paying much more than that. A lot of these small school districts cannot afford to pay more, so that's why I say I think we've got to look at not only the rates and the benefits, but also the funding to come up with a long-term solution. And then insurance. Insurance is about spreading the risk, and there's a low participation rate. Some schools have as little as maybe 40% participating in the program. So there's a lot of variables, I think, a lot of factors that have contributed to this. And I don't want to get in the way of this very short, narrow legislative session. I think they're close to having some kind of agreement reached for this Band-Aid approach, if you will, and I don't want to try to turn it into something related to the political campaign. I think that would be inappropriate. I think we need to let those who have been elected to serve now do their job, and if we need a longer-term fix moving forward, I'm committed to hopefully accomplishing that in the ways I've just described in a bipartisan way.
Could definitely be an issue or a headache that you get to deal with if you're elected governor. Let's turn to your jobs plan. Talk about what you have been on the campaign stuff talking about. I think we've got a graphic we can pull up here to talk about kind of the overview of the Mike Ross jobs plan. A lot of talk about pre-K, K through 12, higher education. There's tax cuts, there's government efficiency, there's obviously some big economic development components in there. Let's start with this pre-K debate. This has been a big plank for you in here. You're looking at potentially 8 years to fully implement what you want to do in pre-K. What do you do in the interim with those folks that aren't going to be in that window of inclusion and are already in the public school system, the education system, and looking for jobs?
Well, I think, look, I think, I've said I want to be the education governor. Whether you want to talk about poverty issues, hunger issues, crime issues, prison overcrowding issues, more, better paying jobs, quality of life issues, healthcare issues, it all starts with education. And I think we have to have a long-term and a short-term approach to it. I think a lot of times politicians or policymakers or legislators, even governors and presidents, I mean, I think there is a desire to come up with a plan that can be implemented within a year or two, so you can then take credit for it and run for re-election on it. And, you know, it's not unique just to Arkansas, but in Arkansas we've made a lot of progress in education, but we're 49th in America in terms of adults with a college degree. So part of this plan is something that I may never get credit for, and that's okay though if we can change Arkansas' standing in America and in the world as it relates to education. So, you know, start sooner, finish stronger, and we're talking about 4-year-olds. And you may not see the end result of that in terms of having more college graduates from those who are 4 now, you know, for 20 years.
Generational, correct. You've got a long kind of pipeline there to kind of work your way through.
Rather than trying to get this immediate gratification, rather than trying to come up with something that I can beat my chest and take credit for in 2 years, let's get to the root of the problem. And I feel very strongly that it's pre-K. You know, studies tell us, I mean, well, you know this, from the time you're born through the 3rd grade, you're learning to read. From the 4th grade through the rest of your life, you're reading to learn. When you hit the 4th grade, if you're still trying to learn to read when you begin reading to learn, learning to read when you begin reading to learn, you fall behind, and oftentimes you never do get caught back up. We know if you go to pre-K, less likely to repeat a grade, more likely to complete high school, more likely to complete college, be employed as an adult when others are not, less likely to end up on government assistance, less likely to end up in prison. Oklahoma has figured this out, and over 75%, or around 75% of the 4-year-olds in Oklahoma are enrolled in pre-K. It's less than 50% in Arkansas. Some school districts do not even have a pre-K program. It's about giving parents more choices, not less. If you're a parent and you got a 4-year-old and you want them in a public pre-K classroom, there should be a desk for them, regardless of your income and regardless where you live in Arkansas.
Let's jump to a more immediate need, though, and that is you've got some folks that will be heading into college. We've seen lottery revenue falling for those scholarships. Do you advocate smaller scholarships for using the lottery funds, or do you advocate fewer scholarships that maybe hold the amount of money closer to the actual amounts now?
You know, the lottery is playing out like it has in most states, and that is it started off with a bang and it generated a lot of revenue, and now fewer people are playing the lottery games and the revenue is shrinking. And you know, now there's some debate over expanding lottery into some games that I don't think the voters really envisioned when they voted for it.
And it looks like the legislature is going to take that up in the special session. The governor's added that to the call.
And I agree with what they're trying to do there. I don't think you can fix the lottery revenue problem by creating new programs. I think it is what it is. You just got to recognize that, you know, I think revenue from the lottery will probably stabilize. It probably won't grow a whole lot. And we just got to find a way to fairly and adequately distribute those funds to where they do the most good for our young people that otherwise might not have an opportunity to achieve the American dream, the Arkansas dream of going to college.
What's the most immediate thing you could do as governor to cause some sort of paradigm shift? What you're talking about doing with pre-K is obviously a long-term, a generational challenge that we've talked about. What's the one thing you could do on day one to flip the switch and start improving the situation from where it is now?
I think you look at 100 ninth graders, 20 of them aren't going to finish high school. 40 of them is going to go to college, only 20 is going to graduate college. We're 49th in America in terms of adults with a college degree. We can do better, we must do better. But what about the other 80? A lot of young people today, they feel like we look down upon them if they do not go to college. They feel like they've got 3 options: college, military, minimum wage. Well, there's a 4th option out there. I still call it VOTEC, but career and technical training. We've got great community colleges. We've got some good technical schools. We need greater partnerships between K through 12, community colleges, technical schools, and existing industry, so that these young people who do not choose to go to college, they can learn a skill, they can learn a trade, get a certification, and get a good paying job. And in doing so, it helps provide our state with that educated, trained, and skilled workforce we need to attract the good paying jobs of today and tomorrow.
And you've advocated kind of this, I guess, a new stimulus into your workforce cabinet, where you have advocated putting your lieutenant governor nominee as well, John Burkhalter, in charge of that workforce cabinet, really pushing forward with a lot of the reforms that the legislature is already in the process of making happen. Possibility John Burkhalter doesn't get elected. What do you do in terms of the centerpiece of your workforce cabinet and putting someone, could he still do that job for you, whether he's elected or not? It's not like like he's waiting around for the lieutenant governor's salary, you know.
Well, I'm very optimistic and confident that we're both going to win, and we're going to work together to make Arkansas an even better place to live, work, and raise a family. But look, the bottom line is this, you know, I'm going to be a very hands-on governor. I want to be the biggest economic ambassador this state has ever had. I'm going to be very involved in job creation, economic development, regardless of what happens in these races, and trying to predict who wins what. But I'm confident John and I are going to win, and because we're running on a jobs first plan that we believe can really create more and better paying jobs for the hardworking people in this state.
I've gotten you on the record before about this concept of a workforce czar, which is something that a lot of folks have been talking about in industry circles. I want to read something that the governor said. We've got a quote to pull up on him. There is a good point to be made that a good governor has so many plates that he has to balance, from education to prisons to health care to all sorts of things, that sometimes it's hard to devote as much time to that one topic. He was speaking about workforce. Do you see putting someone beside yourself, if John Burkhalter's not there as your lieutenant governor, how would you kind of deal with this workforce oversight situation?
Well, I'm committed to having a governor's cabinet on economic development. We're not talking about any new spending. We're not talking about any new bureaucracy. We've already got 6 or 7 state agencies that deal with different aspects of economic development. I just want to get them at the same table, meeting on a regular basis, really with a laser focus on everything from helping create new small businesses, helping small businesses grow. About half the new jobs come from small businesses. Working toward bringing jobs back from overseas. You know, a lot of talk these days about onsourcing or insourcing, and I think we have a real opportunity for manufacturing jobs. The standard of living, wages, transportation costs are going up in places like China and India, and we're starting to see these manufacturing jobs come back to America. They're not going to locate on the east or west coast. They're overtaxed, they're over-regulated. Arkansas is a prime location for these new, better paying, highly skilled jobs, which is why career tech is also a big piece of that puzzle, I believe.
Let's talk about tax cuts, because this is another centerpiece of your jobs plan. You've talked about realigning, modernizing the state income tax code, also a manufacturer's tax cut. All told, that's a little over $610 million, and if you did it all at once, which I know you've advocated kind of sliding into a lot of that. How did you come to the decision on modernizing the state income tax code? Did you consider some other tax variables, tax cut variables?
We looked at a lot of things, but I think it's about bringing lower fair taxes to the hardworking folks in this state, creating a more competitive business environment in this state. Look, we've got 6 state income tax rates in Arkansas, and yet 60% of the folks are in the top 2 rates. 1 out of every 3 is in the top rate. Really? I mean, and so there's huge discrepancies. The top rate starts at $34,000 a year. So a single mom working 2 jobs to try and make ends meet, earning $34,000 a year, is paying the same state income tax rate as someone making $340,000 a year, or someone making $3.4 million a year. There's nothing fair about it, and I want to fix it and get it back to what was envisioned when the legislature created these brackets and these rates back in 1971, because what happened for 25 years, they didn't index the income for inflation. So in 1971, when these brackets and these rates were established, the median household income in Arkansas was $8,000 a year, and folks were paying about 4% state income tax. Today, the median household income is still way too low, $40,000 a year, and yet it throws them in the top bracket, because for 25 years we didn't index those brackets for inflation. And then the manufacturing, taking the sales tax off manufacturing parts, replacement parts and repairs. Look, I know it doesn't sound real sexy probably, but it is so important. I've been doing economic development all my life. This is the #1 tax reform proposal recommended by the State Chamber of Commerce. And here's why it's important. Surrounding states do not charge that sales tax. And as a result, it puts us in a very non-competitive situation. I've been involved in retaining Cooper Tire, and I was very involved in retaining Cooper Tire in Texarkana, Firestone Building Products in my hometown in Prescott. you know, when the economy gets sluggish, industry, they have to decide which plant to close. Oftentimes they close the plant that is least modernized. And we spend all this money trying to get industry to locate here. But then we tell them over the years, we want you to continue to modernize, but if you do, we're gonna tax you. And so, you know, a plant that's been here for 20 years, putting people to work, if they need to replace a part or modernize their plant to ensure they're here long term,
they're paying sales tax on it in other states.
We're paying sales tax on it. They're not in other states. A new industry that comes in, by the way, who hadn't been putting people to work for 20 years, they don't pay sales tax on the same equipment.
Did you ever consider or contemplate cutting the corporate income tax? That is a smaller dollar figure in terms of your an overall tax budget. It's about $400 million a year. It's a volatile income category, as you well know from your years in the state Senate. And it would send a signal that Arkansas is open for business if there is no corporate income tax right here. Did you give that any thought or consideration?
I did, and I'm interested in hopefully being able to pursue something on that. I know some states basically say no corporate income tax for the first 10 years if you bring your business and make an investment and put people to work in your state. I think that's something that we should look at as well, because it's not going to reduce revenue, because that's revenue we currently do not have. But
you're talking about extending it to new industry that might locate here.
I think it's something we should look at. I'd like to talk to the legislature about it and work with Democrats and Republicans in a bipartisan way to see if we can't do something. You know, the bottom line is this: this is not Washington. Money doesn't grow on trees. We don't print money. We don't deficit spend. We've got to have a balanced budget first. We need to fund education, Medicaid, public safety. And then as we have revenue growth, I want to do some of these things exactly the same way that Governor Beebe took the sales tax off groceries. It's actually a 12-year process. We're 7.5 years into it. 80% of the sales tax on groceries is now gone. He wasn't able to do it all in year one in a fiscally responsible way. He's done it the correct way. And I want to do this the correct way. And I think the first thing you got to do is bring fairness to the state income tax code for working families in Arkansas. And again, it's just not right that the top rate in Arkansas starts at $34,000 a year.
Last question for you here. Let's talk about regulations, another component of your plan here.
Yeah.
You wrote in your jobs plan that, or someone wrote for you because it references you in the third person. Based on his own personal experiences, Mike Ross recognizes that if we want to create more private sector jobs in Arkansas, we must cut red tape, reduce the regulatory burden on job creators, and make it easier to start, operate, and grow your own business in the state. What regulation, can you point to a specific regulation that you had to deal with as a small business owner that you think would be a good idea to get rid of this?
I don't know that I can point to one as much as it's so complicated. I used to own a small business. I know what it's like to meet a payroll every Friday. I know what it's like to deal with rules and regulations. And you know, when you own a pharmacy, I mean, you're dealing with lots of different rules and regulations. A lot of small business owners aren't just dealing with one agency. They're dealing with multiple agencies, and it can get quite confusing. And so that's why one of the things I want to do is have one website that everyone can go to for every rule and regulation in Arkansas, instead of thinking, well, I need to go to the pharmacy board for this, I need to go to the electrical board for this, I need to go to the plumbing board for this, or it gets very complicated. So we need one-stop shopping. We need one website you can go to open a business in Arkansas. One-stop shopping, and you also need one-stop shopping to figure out what the rules and regulations are. But more importantly, any rule or regulation that has been on the books for more than 3 years, it's kind of like my hometown of Prescott. We got about 3,400 people. We have 2 traffic lights there. We all understand why one of them exists. The other one, the best answer you'll get down there is, because it's at an intersection that there's never a lot of traffic. At least on East Elm, there's not a lot of traffic. There's some on 67. And the best answer is it's there because it's always been there. We've got some rules and regulations on the books for the same reason. They're there because they've always been there. So if they've been there more than 3 years, I want a review of every rule and regulation in this state that's been put in place by the legislature, by boards, by commissions, by state agencies, to identify, one, did they ever work? And two, if they did, do they still work today, and do we still need them?
All right, Mike Ross, Democratic gubernatorial candidate, best of luck to you. We'll be at this table again soon, and I think I'm hosting like 3 or 4 debates and forums that you guys are at, so we'll see each other a lot on the campaign trail.
Well, thank you, and our entire Jobs First plan can be read at MikeRoss.com.